Hi, this is Danny from Mysterious Things Tarot. Welcome to my channel today. This is where we take a mysterious story and we try to bring some insights to it through tarot. So let's take a look at our story today. It's an old case, but such an extreme instance of a mismanaged investigation that I just had to do a reading on it. It is a sad story of children, one dead, two accused, and a death left unsolved. Christian Carlson was 7 years old, and his brother Robin was 5 when they were accused of killing 4-year-old playmate Kevin Hjalmarsson. For nearly 20 years, they lived under the cloud of a murder that they don't remember committing. Being so young, Christian and Robin were never formally charged with the murder. But that police accusation has negatively affected their lives since that horrible day, August 16, 1998, when their friend tragically died. It was a warm, lazy Sunday. 4-year-old Kevin Hjalmarsson was running around with friends near the schoolyard and by the bay in the lower income neighborhoods of Dottvik, Sweden. And I probably butchered the way how you say that, but Dottvik or Dottvik, Sweden. So it was the last day of summer vacation, and a lot of children were outside playing on that warm summer evening. It wasn't unusual for the kids to be out playing in the neighborhood for hours and riding bikes and playing ball and making up games. At around 8:30 p.m., though, Kevin's family hadn't seen him for about 4 hours, and they decided to go round him up for dinner. His grandparents began looking for him, but they became more and more worried as the minutes passed with no Kevin in sight. Then about 45 minutes into the search, Kevin's grandfather's heart skipped a beat. There was Kevin. He was lying on top of a pallet that was floating in the reeds in Truecrime Bay. He was missing his shoes and one of his socks. He lifted the little boy and carried him to shore, where Kevin's grandmother started mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, while the grandfather ran home and called emergency dispatch. But it was too late. Kevin was dead. The next morning, August 17th, 2 policemen were standing watch outside the barricaded area, waiting for the CSI crime scene investigation to investigate the scene when they're approached by 2 children, Christian and Robin. Trying to be helpful, they handed the officers Kevin's missing sandals and a sock. They said an older boy had told them that the missing items were behind the shed near the bay, so they retrieved them for the police. And they likely messed up any crime scene in the process. Later that day, the pathologist in charge of Kevin's autopsy informed the police that Kevin died of suffocation, and some bruising indicated that he might have also been sexually assaulted. The police had 3 avenues of suspects. The family, since most murders of children are familial. A pedophile. There were 3 known pedophiles living in the area at the time of Kevin's death. And one of the other children he'd been playing with or around. In the ensuing days, all the family and the 3 pedophiles were ruled out due to verified alibis. So that left the children. The police interviewed over 100 children to no avail. There were several groups of young children playing there that day, and a group of teens were seen in the schoolyard around 5 p.m. Among those teens was a 13-year-old boy who had been seen buying candy with Kevin sometime after 5 p.m. This same boy had told the two kids where to find Kevin's sandals and sock the day after the murder. The 13-year-old said he was in the library and was ruled out as a suspect. I'm sure the small town of Dotovik was abuzz with rumor and concern and likely all anybody was talking about. So 6 days later, August 22nd, 7-year-old Christian Dahlin, trying to be helpful, tells his father that he saw Kevin with an older kid on the day of the murder. Well, the father immediately packs up his two young sons and get in the car and he drives down to the police station. And while driving, the younger brother, 5-year-old Robin, says Kevin was his best friend and he too wanted to help. He said he saw Kevin be murdered. At the police station, Christian explains what happened on August 16th. He was staying at his mom's house and was going to his dad's to have dinner and then go fishing. At around 4 p.m., he arrived at his dad's and stepmom's house. And after he goes inside, the doorbell rings. And outside is Kevin and another boy. They ask him if he wants to come out and play. But Christian's family have company over and they're just about to have dinner before going fishing. So Christian tells Kevin that he can't. After dinner, at around 5 p.m., the two brothers go outside and play in the street with the 3 children of their guests. So there's 5 of them out there. But at 6 p.m., the two families get in their cars and go fishing. And they return home late in the evening. Now, Christian's story was corroborated by his father and by members of the other family. That means Christian could not be the killer because he was with 3 other children at the time of Kevin's death. The younger brother, Robin, tells police that he witnessed the murder. He saw an unknown boy stab Kevin in the stomach with a knife and then kick him into the water off a bridge into Kirkeven Bay. The brothers are interviewed 5 times over the course of 4 hours that day, and each time Robin's story is different and inconsistent with Christian's. They range from Kevin being stabbed to being pushed into the water and drowning, Kevin falling and accidentally drowning. Over the next week, Christian and Robin are interviewed 7 more times. And the father is asked to talk to the boys about the case at home and take notes and call the police with information that he gets from them. At one point, Robin says he knows where the murderer lives and he walks the investigators to a house. But nobody who lives there could be considered a suspect. On September 1st, during an interrogation of 5-year-old Robin, the police commissioner, Rolf Sandberg, suggests to Robin that the one he saw kill Kevin was his big brother, Christian. And when that question is asked, Robin says yes. Sandberg asks him this a total of 15 times if he saw Christian kill Kevin. And 8 times Robin says yes. But 7 times he says no. After a harsh 40-minute unrelenting interrogation where Sandberg, dressed in full uniform, spoke in a severe and intimidating manner while towering over this 5-year-old, other police officers step in to stop the interview. Since Sandberg's intuition tells him that children are the culprits, the investigators decide to look into the group of teenagers that were hanging around the schoolyard around the time of the murder. 2 of them are identified as possible suspects. The police interrogate both of them, and wiretaps are placed on their phones to surveil whether they talk about it. The phone surveillance didn't yield any results, and the boys were never said anything incriminating. In their last of several interrogations at the end of September, both of the teens begin to cry because of the aggression of the investigators. but they maintain their innocence and eventually are ruled out as suspects. During September, psychologist Sven Christensen is contacted by the investigators, and he has assisted the police in several high-profile cases in the past, and his expertise is in repressed memories. He says, based on the interviews, that the two brothers had information they hadn't shared, and to focus on them as suspects. During the month of October, the police amped up the pressure on the little boys. They were interrogated 9 more times and made more and more admissions. But the circumstances described were inconsistent with the evidence. Sven Christensen, the psychologist, explained that from a psychological standpoint, this makes perfect sense. The boys want to confess, but they have to feel like they are in a safe environment in order to do so, he said. The repressed mental block will release when they feel comfortable. That's why their confessions don't align with the facts of the case. Let me just say here something about repressed memory theory. Repressed memory for traumatic events stored in the unconscious mind and blocked from normal consciousness was a concept widely accepted in the 90s. It seemed like every celebrity under psychoanalysis had repressed memories of being raped by their uncles or fathers or brothers, and it tore families apart as the memories felt real but were proven false. And the harshly accused were innocent, and the repressed memory theory was widely debunked. Dr. Richard McNally, professor and director of clinical training in the Department of Psychology at Harvard University, has said, the notion that traumatic events can be repressed and later recovered is the most pernicious bit of folklore ever to infect psychology and psychiatry. It has provided the theoretical basis for recovered memory therapy, the worst catastrophe to befall the mental health field since the lobotomy era. But this story happened in the 90s, and this theory was being touted as the best thing since sliced bread, and the children were soon to be subjected to its horror. When Christian and Robin's father understands that his 2 sons are no longer considered witnesses but suspects, the pressure put on him by the investigators over the past couple of months has just been too much. With taking notes and making reports to the police only to find out that his sons were now suspects, he had a mental breakdown, and he had to enter a psychiatric hospital for evaluation. Sweden doesn't have the stigma and shame connected to mental issues that the U.S. has. In Sweden, if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, it's perfectly acceptable to get help for that. It's as perfectly acceptable to get help for that as for a broken bone. While in the psychiatric hospital, the father is heavily sedated and told he cannot see his family. And then he's interviewed by Sandberg. He asks him if the boys' clothes were wet when they came back from playing in the street before going fishing on August 16th. And the father, after a long interview with police, says, well, they might have been. But the investigators still have a problem. The 10-year-old boy and his parents that were visiting the Dahlman family on the day of the murder gave the brothers an alibi. After the 2 families had dinner together, the 5 children went outside to play. The mother was watching them through the window, and the 10-year-old was in charge to make sure that nobody ran off. After around 30 minutes, the children went inside and changed their clothes before going fishing at 6 p.m. The family is interviewed again, and again, and again between August and October. and the 10-year-old boy is interviewed a total of 14 times. But he never changes his story. The boys were with him the whole time and never went down to the bay, and their clothes were not wet. But Sandberg is still convinced of the boys' guilt, and he decided to just totally ignore that testimony. The psychiatrist, Christensen, believes a crime reenactment would trigger repressed memories that both boys have of the murder, and Sandberg believed it would work on the boys to produce details and a confession of the crime. So they set up a reenactment, and Christensen fed the investigators questions through an earpiece. So remember, at this time, the circumstances surrounding Kevin's death had not been revealed, and the public didn't know anything about his injuries. They didn't know that his cause of death was suffocation. They didn't know where he was found exactly. They didn't know that he was never pushed into the water and his clothes were dry when he was found. They did not know that the murder could not have taken place on the bridge if the brothers were guilty, as it was determined that those two little boys were not strong enough to carry Kevin 30 plus yards from the bridge to the pallet where he was found. For the most part, the brothers' confessions mostly contains the bridge and drowning. The brothers try to find an answer that the law enforcement would like, versions of 1, them not being involved, 2, being stabbed, 3, stabbed by an old man, 4, kicked into the water by a boy, 5, pushed into the water by another boy, 6, pushed into the water by an old man, 7, pushed into the water by Robin, 8, Kevin falling in himself by accident. They never once mentioned suffocation or the pallet or any injuries during the 22 interrogations up until this point. So besides having an alibi, they're not even close to explaining how Kevin died. On September 26th, the final investigations are held. A new strategy, suggested by Christensen, is implemented. Detective Ingrid Harrison tells Robin everything about the investigation. She shows him a picture of where Kevin was found and draws pictures of Kevin's injuries and tells him about the bruise on his neck. And then she gets to work trying to get Robin to say they did it. In total, Harrison asks Robin over 100 times to explain the bruising on Kevin's neck. He can't. Finally, he says that Christian pinched Kevin on the neck. He never says that Kevin died, and he says he wasn't there when the body was transported to the pallet. 12 times during this interrogation, he says he's told them everything, but Harrison persists. And finally, after 2 hours and 245 questions, Harrison gives up without getting a confession, even though she has told Robin exactly how Kevin died. Later that day, Christian was interrogated. The same strategy is utilized on him. And after probing him for a while in their normal fashion, the detectives tell him about the bruise on Kevin's neck. But despite threats and encouragement, he doesn't come up with a satisfactory explanation. He just doesn't know what to say to make the investigators happy. In total, Christian is asked 1,246 questions. 61 times he cries that he's too tired to go on and wants to see his mom. But the investigators persist. They say that if he wants to see his mom, he first has to tell them what happened. Finally, they bring out a photo and point to where they found Kevin's body. Christian now seems to understand what he's supposed to do. He tells him that him and his brother moved the body from the bridge to the pallet and left him there. but he still can't give him the right details about how Kevin died or how they transported him through the dense shrubbery and trees. The investigators stopped the interview after 4.5 hours without ever getting a confession. Later that evening, Sandberg held another interrogation with Robin where he finally confesses and describes in detail that it was Christian that killed Kevin by strangling him with a stick, and they transported the body from the bridge to the pallet. This interrogation was not videotaped, and no audio recording exists. Only a short written report authored by Sandberg. It's pretty doubtful this ever really happened. But Sandberg has finally gotten the confession that no other investigator could get during 25 interrogations held with those little boys. Another attempt is made the next day to get Robin to repeat what he told Sandberg, and this time on camera, and he couldn't. And he didn't seem to remember his confession from the day before either. In November 1998, Sandberg held a press conference announcing the case was solved, but since the culprits were children, no trial would be held. The boys were never convicted of the murder, so they were legally only regarded as suspects. But both boys were taken by social services for treatment and psychological help at a children's institution. The state imprisoned the children away from their parents and their So I did a little shuffling off camera, so it wouldn't be so annoying to listen to me shuffle and shuffle and shuffle. Today I'm using the Wildwood Tarot. I'd like to use that for young people. Seems to give a more accurate reading. I'm very comfortable with these cards. So if you haven't seen my videos before, I like to take 3 cards about what happened before the event, 3 cards about the event, and 3 cards on the aftermath of the event. So what happened to Kevin? There's the 3 cards. Before the event, there's the 3 cards of the event, and here are the 3 cards after the event. Let's take a look and see what happened to Kevin. All right, let's start this reading. Let me move these so that they could be seen a little bit better. Okay. The first card we have here is the 8 of Bows. These cards are not necessarily read right side up or upside down. This 8 of Bows is the hearth fire. And you can see there are all these children playing. There are 8 of them. Now, according to Kevin's story, there were 5 boys playing together. But were there more? Who are these other 3? There were 3 teenagers hanging around. Were they also playing with these younger children? The next card is the stag. The stag is about cause and effect, right and wrong, and a search for the truth. That's what we're kind of doing here. Strength, protection. And in this one, it's the 8 of Stones. The 8 of Stones is about building something or working on something. So they may have been building a fort or working on something that became a trap. And maybe they weren't able to ask for help. This is about building something. This was before the event. Now, of the event, we have the Page of Stones. The Page of Stones is an authority. Somebody older, training you, showing you how to do something. It's also about being observed. The lynx was a quiet cat, someone that watched their prey before taking that decisive blow or jump. So there was someone watching these children, or showing them how to do something, to build something. The next card is the Six of Stones. This is about somebody that is taking advantage of somebody else. It's about exploiting them. They might have some sort of psychosis going on here. And the Eight of Arrows, which is a struggle. You can also see that there was a tool here, a stick. We know that from the story I just told you, that there was a stick involved. Now that stick could be they were building something. It could have been a stick that suffocated Kevin. It could have been a lot of things like that, but there was a tool involved. And there were lots of other little things. These are clues that were left, but were not picked up on. So law enforcement didn't do a great job here. In the aftermath of the event is the Nine of Vessels. The Nine of Vessels is a generosity. The Nine of Vessels is a connection between people. Good fortune that you're sharing. I think that this might be a message for Christian and Robin, that because of their experience that has to do with that they've gone through for so many years, that they should share what they've learned, what comes back to them in the end. They may not think they have good fortune, but they do have something to share about being falsely accused and the feelings that happen around that. So I think I think this is for Christian and Robin. Next we have the Ace of Stones, the foundation of life. Again, I think this has to do with Christian and Robin. I think what they've gone through, the foundation of what they've gone through, that they can change the world. They can transform their dreams or desires or whatever they have built over these years, this connection between them and the strength that they've built together to actually change things for other people. I would recommend that if they haven't already, to look into building some sort of foundation for people, some sort of way to comfort others who have been in the same situation that they have. I don't know how many of them there are, but I know there are a lot of people that feel unjustly accused. And this last card is Balance. And this crime was beyond human sympathy and humanity. And balance represents a need for inner strength, freeing yourself from self-doubt, and balancing your life. So these may all be a message for Robin and Christian to balance their life, to make something good from what happened that was bad, and to help others. I think it's pretty much what that says. There's no consequence in these for anything that happened to Kevin. It does not look like an accident. It looks like there was someone that had been watching him. It was maybe there was an accident within that. But let's look at the cards. A couple more cards on. Can we find out who did this to Kevin? Wow, the Knight of Vessels. That's a snake in the house, I usually call it. Someone's pretty slippery, a shapeshifter that kind of slips around their emotions pretty easily. May have already left the area. It's gone. And the King of Vessels. King of Vessels is this heron is just standing there. The water's moving around them, and they're just standing there. They just let all that flow around them, all the turmoil, and just doesn't do anything. So unless something new happens, I don't think this case will be solved. Okay, that's my reading on Kevin, and I hope you enjoyed it. It is for entertainment purposes only. This is what the cards say and my intuitions about what the cards are saying. If you'd like to like, comment, share, I welcome all of that. And I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.